We'll be recording this section. Thank you, Ben. We'll be recording this part, Katie's presentation, and we will, of course, have plenty of time for questions and discussion towards the end. Katie?
Thanks so. Oh, sorry. Oh, I am unmuted. Okay. Thought I wasn't making noises here in the background. Thank you, Chiefy. It's great to be with you all. So let me say a couple things by way of introduction. I know, looking at the list of people and faces that I can see, that we have some bona fide experts on this call who know more about this topic than I do, for sure. So I welcome you, especially since we're a small group, to interject, correct, ask questions, lift up related points. Let's have this be kind of a dialogue. And then I'll also say that I framed this to not just talk about what we're planning in Greenville, but to kind of broaden the ideas that we're taking so that you can roll them out in your community or elsewhere in the state. The principles hold wherever you are, regardless of whether there's an initiative of some kind behind it. So with that, let me share a little bit about why voting matters. And let me see if I can get my computer to work. Okay, so I know that I know a lot of you on the screen, and you know that we care in Greenville about advocacy, and we love having partners like Together SC who help connect us with state level work. We do a lot of work with our cities and county. In Greenville County, we bring people to county council meetings and city council meetings. We host events with our elected officials locally here in Greenville County. We have a weekly podcast called Simple Civics Greenville County that really focuses on local government, a little bit state government, but we also do interviews with candidates. We just believe so firmly in the power of nonprofits engaging in advocacy. And so this election, 2024, is the first time we're really getting involved in voting. And I think you all know this, which is why you're on this call. But just to highlight a couple of points of why voting matters for nonprofits and philanthropic funders, I would say. One, policy impacts your organization, your funding, what you can do, what you can't do, what you're required to do. Policy impacts you directly. It, of course, impacts the people you serve. Those same sets of things, what programs are available, what laws they must adhere to, what laws restrict their possibilities. And especially those folks, if you serve communities of color, low propensity turnout voters, policy impacts them, and they should be engaging in the policy process. Policy impacts the context in which you work, whether affordable housing is available, whether your local economy is robust, whether there's transit and good roads available, all those things is policy. And so connecting people with their right to vote is really connecting them with their power. Policy is made by policymakers. And for the most part, those folks are chosen through elections. Now, let me give a disclaimer. This is not legal advice. I'm sure you all know that, but I want to say it. Great resources are, of course, an attorney, if you have one, to help guide you. If you really want to get into this work intensively. And then Boulder Advocacy, I hope you all know about, is a great national resource through the Alliance for Justice that has an Ask a Lawyer line that you can call for free technical support as you get into election related or any advocacy related activities. But so let me share some things with you. First, how can nonprofits engage in elections? There are some nonprofit boards that are still saying we can't advocate. I'm assuming all of you guys on this call know that, like, of course you can advocate and you should advocate. Nonprofits can also do some legislative lobbying. That's not to the topic of today, but that is also allowed. And, there's probably a deep dive that could happen later from Together SC on that. But related to elections, you can engage in election related activities as long as they are nonpartisan, non-candidate focused, and focused only on issues that are the natural, normal things that you do all the time. You cannot oppose or support a particular candidate. You can't align with a particular party. As you can see, there's some differences with 501c4s and C6s, but for most of our Together SC friends, 501c3s who are not private foundations, you can engage in election related work. And that's the kind of work we want to talk about. So a couple of broad principles that can help. As long as you do election related work that focuses on all of your people and not on any party or candidate, you are doing appropriate election related work. As long as you don't incentivize, assist, or reward only a particular group, you are doing appropriate election related work. And as the election gets closer, be careful about how you lift up issues related to candidates and what's happening. So let me just give a couple of examples. If you say, all right, we really want to see a Democrat elected in our community, and we know we can't outwardly say that, but we know that of all the people we serve, it's our teenagers that would be most likely to lift up a Democrat, our recently 18-year-olds. So we're going to motivate our 18-year-olds to vote. That is when you're getting into dicey territory. But if instead you say to your entire constituency, we want all of you guys to vote, how can we do a voter registration? There's a lot of nuance there, but just as one way to think about it, it's like kind of related to your motivation. Related to incentives, assistance, and rewards. If you say we're going to have a voter registration and everyone who registers gets a water bottle with our brand on it, you are in essence buying votes then. So you have to say, we're having a voter registration. Anyone who walks by can have a free water bottle, whether you register or not. That is fine, so long as you're not particularizing your incentive assistance. As the election gets closer, being careful about the issues. So let's say you are always interested in conservation. That is what you always focus on. And as the election gets closer, you do a candidate questionnaire and you lift up, here's what these candidates have to say about conservation. We encourage you to take a look at that because we know you believe about conservation too. That's an okay thing to do. If you have always focused on conservation and you know this particular candidate is not interested in conservation, and you suddenly are shifting your attention to something that's not part of your normal issue area, that's when you get into trouble. So it has to do with the facts and circumstances of things. We're not focused, we're focusing at the high level today, and that's what the effort we're doing in Greenville is focused on. So if you decide to do any deep dive in that, that's where Boulder advocacy can be helpful to you. Right. So don't get scared about what I'm saying today. Like, she's already got me nervous. I'm already needing an attorney. No, no, no. We're keeping it at the high level to help all of us get involved in a new way. So what you can't do is collaborate or coordinate with candidates or any organizations focused on candidates. That probably is pretty obvious to you. Again, you can't focus on populations or demographics because they are more likely to vote for a particular party or candidate. You can focus on a particular population or demographic if that is the nature of your work. Like 100%, you should do that. Again, it gets to those facts and circumstances. And you cannot mention your position on issues that are relevant that could be construed as your support or opposition of a candidate. That gets very complicated. And again, happy to talk offline more about that, and Boulder Advocacy can help. But we want to make it easy for you to not have to get in the legal weeds as you work on election turnout. All right, so let me kind of give you some background about the June 11th primary that GP mentioned. And some of you on the screen might be like, of course I know this. Like, I'm passionate about this. I always vote. But as we've been doing a little bit of the roadshow on this, I have found that a lot of people who are community leaders, who are very engaged, don't really get the difference between these two, or like they kind of know, but they don't exactly keep track. So if you'll allow me, let me run through this. So in South Carolina, we had our presidential primaries for the 2024 November election in February. We had our Democratic primary and our Republican primary. That's when the parties chose who was going to go on the ballot in November for our Democratic presidential candidate and our Republican presidential candidate. A lot more to happen with conventions, all that, yada, yada. We're not talking about that today. So then that leads on the presidential side to the general election. But all of these offices that are so important to the work that a lot of us nonprofits do, our legislature, our state senators, our state house members, our county council members, your sheriff, your clerk of courts, all those things that really impact your day-to-day life and those of the people you serve, those have their primary on June 11th. The June primary has abysmally low turnout traditionally. It was only 14% of voters in Greenville County in 2022, 17% across the state. People just think it's the extra credit assignment. They're at the beach, they forget about it. This is where we have got to really focus our attention. And it's going to come up fast, but it's going to be, we're going to try to make it easy for everybody. Now, as a reminder, we do not register by party in South Carolina. You are not registered by a party. All primaries are open, so you can vote in either primary if that is what suits you. As a note, our city council elections are in odd years, and this is related to Greenville. And most of them don't have primaries because most are nonpartisan in the state. So, but back to this June 11th election, let me give you some examples. In 2022, the last time we had this primary time, 70% of the midterm races in the upstate were not contested in November. Okay, only 9 of those 36 races in the upstate had a choice in November. Most of the choices that were available happened only in June. They were on the ballot, and there was one party who had a candidates who filed, and then it was done. Okay, in November, there was almost 51% turnout in the state, but only 17% in the June primary, meaning those June people got to really make the decision. Everyone else rolled up in November, excited to get their sticker, and the work was, for the most part, already done. So the June primary is so important. To drill down another layer, here is one. I blocked out who this is, what district it is, because it's not, I don't want to seem to like show I'm showing preference or concern about this person. But in this district, there's more than 40,000 people who live there in this state house district. Just over 3,000 people came out to vote. And a tiny fraction of them, not a tiny fraction, but a fraction of them are the ones who determined who this House member is. This House member went on to the general election in November when most people came out to vote, and there was no other choice. You could check the box for that person, done. And that person has been very active policy-wise in our legislature, engaged in a lot of things that nonprofits have strong opinions about. So this primary race really mattered, and such a small number of people knew and took part in it. Okay, so here's what we know about 2024 in Greenville County. This is just a little screenshot of a part of the people who have filed to run. In Greenville County, we have 37 races that are on the ballot throughout the county. They are, as you can see, our clerk of court, our sheriff, most of our county council, or little more than half, all of our state House of Representatives, all of our state senators, and then 2 Congress people touch Greenville County, William Timmons and then Jeff Duncan's seat that he is leaving. Like super important races, right, guys? This screenshot is pretty indicative of if I went down the whole rest of the spreadsheet. You can see that there's a lot of interest. A lot of people have filed to run, but based on which area it is only in one party. And that is true both for these ones where on the left column, only Republicans filed, as well as on the right column where only Democrats filed. So if you do not vote in June and you live in Greenville County, you don't get a say in who the sheriff is. You don't get a say in who the clerk of court is. You don't get a say potentially in who your county council member is. It goes right on down the line. So voting in June is where it matters. There's a little recap of it. Let me go down a little bit deeper if I haven't convinced you yet. And I'm sure that you guys already know because that's why you're here and you care about this. But so you can have messages to share with the people you serve and your board members and the like. Primaries are more important in South Carolina than the general for these local and state races because we have lower turnout overall. We have more extreme turnout. The people who are paying attention to this are the people that are super engaged in their parties, which is great. Like I am all for civic activism. But that large middle of moderates who are busy going to the beach, working, trying to figure out childcare for their kids because it's summer, who represent probably the majority of community opinions are not showing up. Primaries are open, so anyone, again, can vote in either primary. It is often the only time voters will have a choice. There are often runoffs because you have so many candidates running. They'll need to come back 2 weeks later. Even fewer people turn out, and those important decisions are made. And lastly, and very importantly, I think for all of us as nonprofit leaders, candidates do not have much money in local races and even in state races. And especially at this point in the campaign, because they're not yet moving on to the ballot where people have started to put money towards them. And so they focus what little money and time they have on likely voters. if I'm going to try to get you to come out and you have pretty reliably voted, it's your opinion I'm going to try to change. If you are serving people who don't typically vote because they don't know about it, they don't feel like it matters, they're not going to hear from candidates and they're not going to hear this is happening. And so this is why these primaries are super important for us to engage in. Okay. So it is such an important turnout opportunity for nonprofits. Now, as I've looked at that abysmal data with different people here in Greenville County, I have had this feeling like, yeah, but like that's not us. Like we get it. We understand the importance of county council. We understand all those things I put up already about how policy makes a difference in nonprofits and clients' lives. So we are showing up. It is all these other people that are not around the board table. Jason Zacher, who used to be with our Chamber of Commerce, said, I want to see if that's actually the case with our board. And he bought the voter participation list and he took his board members for the chamber and matched it up with that list and found that of the chamber, the Greenville Chamber of Commerce, which is a legislative advocacy leader, only 30% of their board members had voted in the primary. So I thought, okay, I want to check that out too. So I bought the list. I got 10 nonprofit board lists that were kind of the big nonprofits in town, are the Peace Center, um, United Way, the Community Foundation, a couple of other big nonprofits. And so I went and looked up all those different people and found that when I pulled that in, only 44% of those people had voted in the primary. And as I looked up the individual people and their addresses, it was super dismaying to see that like some of these people are the big deal leaders in our community who everybody knows. And some of them lived in races in areas that had races that were really important for them to have shown up. So rather than be like totally depressed by that fact, I am kind of encouraged by it because I'm like, when we're trying to move from 14% turnout to 16, 17, 20% turnout, we have a group of people who really kind of already get it. They just need a nudge that June 11th is important. Again, at Greater Good Greenville, we just care about civic engagement. The same is true for Together SC. This is not focused on any party, any candidate, any issue for us. We just want people to engage in civics. So some broad things for you all on what impacts someone voting. There's kind of 4 bullets you can think about. One is awareness. Do they even know an election is happening? And for a June 11th primary, the answer for many people is no, I did not know, especially when one of the biggest things that lets people know is local media, which we know the tragedy of the loss of local media in many of our communities, and it is yard signs. And when this is very early and people are focused on on likely voters, you don't see the blanketing of signs yet. So people don't know. The second is access. Are they able to get to the polls? Do they know how to get to the polls? Do they know how to register? The third is impact, this idea of will my vote make a difference? And I think that we can all make the case that, yeah, not only is your vote important for things like roads taxes or arts funding or public safety, but like literally some of these local races are decided by 3 votes, as one primary vote was here in 2020. So your vote literally makes a difference. And lastly, community. Do you feel like you're part of the community that is talking about this? You can visually see it during November elections when your street has a whole bunch of different colored yard signs and you feel like something's happening. I want to be a part of this. But really more does your social group or other groups that you're a part of value voting. So many nonprofit clients and board members view your nonprofit as their community. When you create an atmosphere of this is what we do in our community, it really makes a difference. So what is a busy nonprofit leader to do with this? Because you already have a whole plan of work. You're probably already very tired. You've probably already made a whole budget that did not include this. What we are trying to do quickly in Greenville County is a campaign called Voting Matters. And we would love for you to use all of this. We welcome you to use all of these same ideas. So the idea is kind of simple. Like this is a lot of information that might be overwhelming, but there's really 3 main things. You've got to focus on registering people and making sure they have a current registration from now to May 12th. I'll drill down on each of these. The second thing is getting people to learn about the candidates that they can vote for from May 13th to June 11th when voting ends. And then you've got to get them to go and actually vote from May 28th, when early voting opens, through June 11th. It's kind of simple. Register, learn, vote. Okay, so let's drill down a little bit. With registration, for most people in South Carolina, it is very easy to register. If they have a driver's license or an ID card, and if they have access to a computer. On the far right, you can see how simple the form is that you need to fill out. I know that this is not true for anybody. And I know that for some clients that folks serve, especially those who are disenfranchised in lots of ways, this is not simple. But for most people, it really is. And it's easy for a nonprofit to help someone if there is computer access there. We also want everyone to check their registration. I was with a friend group the other day and mentioned this. And in that group, it came out, oh, yeah, this person had gotten married. This person had moved. This person was in a temporary location. So checking your registration is really important. And that falls in that same deadline. And you can see that you can also register by mail, in person, and those are the dates there. So just simply getting people to register and check their registration. So again, you're like, well, how do I do that? I'm already super busy. There are some simple things you can do. If you just push this information out and link how in all of your communications between now and the deadline, done. You will capture people that didn't know about this. Put it in your newsletter, put a post on social media. When you do a verbal presentation, say, I hope everyone remembers to register. Pull out your phone right now. You can change your email signatures that says, I'm registered. Are you? Put a link. That's easy, free. The second is if you want to think about how can you work directly with your clients and stakeholders to do this. Like ask during intake if you serve direct clients, are you registered? Can I help you? Put a poster up in your office with a QR code. Have your volunteers call folks. Have your board sign a pledge to vote. We did this at our recent Greater Good Greenville board meeting. We had paper sheets. Everybody signed it. I took a picture of it, and now we'll bug them to follow through on their pledge. So hopefully we'll have 100% turnout. And if there's any GP, you just interrupt me along the way if there's anything in the chat because I can't see it as I'm going. Okay, cool. Okay, the second phase is to learn about the candidates. So it gets kind of simple when you look at who is actually on the ballot. So there's three things that you need to do to let people know about the June 11th primary. If you can connect people with information on what the offices actually do, which is as simple as saying, guys, your county council is on the ballot and they do things like roads funding, public safety, library board appointments, 5 bullets. And people are like, oh, yeah, that is important. I get that. Or the state legislature talked about medical marijuana, abortion, guns, those issues, those words brought up strong feelings for whoever heard them. And you have not really said anything about what your stance is, depending on, where you are on that. So let them know these offices are important. Connect them with information on who the actual candidates are that are in their geographic footprint, and then help connect them with information on what those candidates stand for. So again, how can this be simple? It can be as simple as you sharing the links in the same way I described before for people to look up their sample ballot. It's a super easy tool from the Election Commission that you type in your name, your social security, last 4 digits, your date of birth, and up comes your Democratic and Republican primary ballots. You can then also, depending on your geographic footprint, share a listing of those candidates in your footprint with links to their websites and or social media. I would add that I feel like social media links are very important to remind people to dig a little deeper and see what over the last months has this person really stood for, and how does that align with your values and your interests, which doesn't always come through from a website. And if you want to go the next extra mile, you can host a candidate forum or a meet and greet or send out a candidate questionnaire that you share with everyone. These are pictures from some things we did with League of Women Voters for our municipal elections in the fall. And candidates, like, look at that fabulous turnout in that bottom picture for the Simpsonville City Council and mayor's race. A lot of these local folks who don't have a lot of money don't get enough attention, and many of them are eager to come and meet your folks. If you have time to make that happen between now and June 11th. And then the last thing is the voting. Like, that's the main thing, not just the last thing. So we cannot emphasize enough how important it is to take advantage of South Carolina making early voting available from May 28th through June 7th. That was a COVID change, and it makes it so much easier for people to really make a plan, for you to have more time to help people rather than rushing around on election day to give rides or make calls. You've got some time to help people connect with their opportunity. I am trying to use the term that June 11th is the election deadline. It is election day, but to me, that's the deadline. Like, hopefully, you're done by then. And really encourage people to request absentee ballots as needed. Let me give you a talking point around that June 11th deadline. There was a recent special election in the state of New York for George Santos's vacated seat. And you may have followed the media that there has been a division of opinion about early voting, where the Republican Party members tend to favor election day voting, and Democrats tend to be more open to early voting. That was true in that special election. Democrats came out strong in the early days. On election day in New York, there was a blizzard. I happened to be there visiting my daughter that day, and it really held back voter turnout, and a Democrat won that race. A Democrat may have won anyway. But the point is, regardless of your party, stuff happens, right? Life gets busy. So really encourage people to vote early. What can you do? Same thing. Push it out in your communications. Give your employees time off to vote. Again, you can't like incentivize or reward. So just say everyone can take off whatever amount of time seems right to you between now and election day to go vote. We hope you will. Host a voting celebration event. Have hot dogs for everyone on the first day of early voting. Everyone again can participate. They got a hot dog whether they voted or not, but do something just to lift it up. And check with clients between now and election day about what help they need accessing the ballot. Do you need help requesting an absentee? Do you need a ride? All those kinds of things are things that you can do that are free/cheap, easy, part of the work you do anyway. Y'all, there are people that are very avidly and actively participating in government, but they don't necessarily represent all of you and the folks that you serve. And I just can't emphasize enough how much we have a pretty easy opportunity to get some people off the bench and into the democratic process. And we just want to make it easy for you. So what I'll say, I think this is the key takeaway, is that the pinnacle of social change and social service is getting people to come and get involved in changing the systems that most affect them. So hopefully this right alone gave you some tips that you can think about and use. But if you would like, you can sign up. You can sign the pledge on our website, greatergoodgreenville.org, and you'll see Take the Pledge, and it's a button, and it will give you, there's an email campaign of resources that will come out from now until the election that can hopefully easily equip you. If you don't live in Greenville County, you can still say, okay, well, that's interesting what they're doing. We can replicate that here where we are if you're not in Greenville County. So you can take them as just suggestions rather than that you're part of the Greenville County campaign. I'm also have a blog post that I'm going to put up that I'll share. Maybe GP, you guys could send it out to the people who tuned into the call, that tells you how to look up who the candidates are in your area. It's really easy on the South Carolina Election Commission website. You can pull up in your county who all is running, and that way you can create the same list that I did for Greenville County. When you do it, I think you will be really shocked to see how uncompetitive the general election is in your community. For kicks, I just looked at Richland County yesterday, and I saw that a lot of the county council seats in Richland County and some of the state seats have only Democrats filed to run. So if you don't vote in November, you don't get a choice. There'll be one Democrat on the ballot, and that is all. So because of gerrymandering around the state in lots of different ways, we do tend to have uncompetitive districts, which limits people from even deciding to run in the first place because they know they don't really have a chance. Having more participation in primaries helps make an atmosphere in which everyone will be more interested to potentially put themselves forth as a candidate also. So I think that is it. You all I know can't do anything with these hyperlinks. So again, I'll send this out to GP and the team, and they can get this out to you. There's a ton of resources out there to help. But really, It is very complicated. And if we all go hard on it in future elections, there is some amazing stuff we can do. And some of you probably already do with mobilizing particular communities. And that is stuff that we should do. But for this 2024 primary election that's just around the bend, there are some easy things we can do that I think will really make a difference. So I'm going to stop sharing here and would love to hear from you all about questions you have. But of course, what have you done? What do you know? What would you push back on? Or things you'd like to tease out more? Because I know that the folks here on this call are themselves experts.